What's up, Flick Connection? This is Darren, and it's hard for me to believe it's July already, but since we're halfway through the year, I want to go ahead and recap the first half and talk about my favorite movies that have come out in 2017 so far. Alright, now I'm going to go with my top 5. These are in sort of a rough 5. Some of them I've only been able to see the one time. But as of right now, number 5 in my top 5 list is M. Night Shyamalan's Split.
He's not allowed to touch you. He knows what you're here for. He listens to me.
Now, before some of you freak out and say, well, that's not that great of a movie, I agree. It's not a masterpiece by any means, but I'm super excited for a couple of reasons. Number one, I used to really like M. Night Shyamalan. He's taken a lot of crap over the last couple of years, over the last decade, and it's all totally deserved. His movies have been total garbage. I won't argue that for a minute, but I really loved his first 3 films a lot, and I couldn't wait to see The Village. Was super disappointed by that. And then progressively hated each movie he did after that more and more. Lady in the Water, etc., etc.
etc.
But his last movie, The Visit, didn't really feel like an M. Night Shyamalan movie at all. In fact, it was kind of a rip-off, sort of found footage type thing that was okay. But what got me excited about that movie is he didn't ruin anything. He wasn't reaching for the sun on that one. He made a movie. He had a vision. He got it done. It was a nice, neat little package. So I was like, oh, he might have kind of gotten over himself and figured out how to tell a story again. So with Split, there was a lot of buzz about it. I liked it from beginning to end, even with some of the weirdness in it. I like weirdness in movies. I think it's kind of cool. And I think because of the low budget on this one, he was able to do some ballsy things he wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. James McAvoy was fantastic in it. Super creepy in every single role that he did. And I think he really sold each of the characters that he played, even though a couple of them were so bizarre. The real twist, the twist without giving anything away, the twist at the very end where they sort of tell you what you've just watched, I was like slapping my knees during that one. I was so excited. I can't wait to see what happens next with these movies. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. I think as long as Shyamalan doesn't overdo it and doesn't overthink it too much and just writes a good story and tells it straightforward, I think we're going to have some really cool stuff coming out of him over the next couple of years. So this movie gets some bonus points for me because of all of that. All right, number 4 for me is John Wick. I love the first one. I really, some people think they're a little overrated, but they're fantastic. A lot of practical effects, and it's not just the knowledge that they're practical effects, it sells it. Like Keanu Reeves is actually running and jumping over things and hitting people, and it looks and feels real. It didn't rehash the story, but it very much just felt like a continuation, which I was totally fine with. I'm glad they didn't, one, just repeat a lot of the same stuff. At least I didn't feel like they did that. It's a lot of shooting, a lot of headshots. That's what you're going to get in a movie like this. So, yeah, they rehash that stuff, but it's really, like I said, just a continuation. It's the next 2-hour installment of the John Wick saga. I really liked it a lot. I will be buying a movie ticket to see the third. Can't wait to watch it again. I've watched it twice. I can't wait to watch it again. Number 3 on my list is Get Out. Just like Split, this one's not a masterpiece, but I really love everything about it. I love the experience of watching it. I had the pleasure of watching it in a crowded theater, and then with friends who had not seen it. By the way, when we watched it with friends, we got drunk, and then we sat here and did kind of a fun review about it, me having watched it, and then my friend Dustin having not watched it. And we talked a lot about some of the really strong racial elements in the movie. I don't think we got into it as much as I would have liked because there was a lot of alcohol involved. But if you want to watch that, there's a link right here. Jordan Peele is amazing.
So good. Pulling into Spain. Baked to perfection. Can you believe this?
You can tell he has a love for movies just by watching Key and Peele, because a lot of his bits really have to do with movies, particularly throwbacks, 80s movies.
Everybody here gets to design their own gremlin.
His bits on that are funny because he knows what he's talking about. He's a big movie geek himself, admittedly, and he really used that to create Get Out. Now, in addition to just sort of knowing a lot of the tropes and things and how to use them and how to turn some of them on their heads and Get Out and make something that feels like a throwback but that's completely new and unique. In addition to doing that, he did this really cool thing with the topic of race. We're kind of afraid to talk about race, and when we do, it's this very boiled down, us versus them, sort of we're different type of thing, but it doesn't really get into any of the minutiae involved in it. The subject of race tensions and race relations in America largely gets sort of brushed to the side because people are afraid to talk about it, and they should be. It's very difficult subject to tackle. I think Jordan Peele did it very tactfully in this movie, almost where you don't really realize where he's coming from until you're already invested. And what he did, I kind of can't believe he did it, but he did such a good job, is he really addressed sort of the white liberal racism, which is not something that gets brought up very often, but it's a very real thing I think a lot of people are aware of. And he brought it up in a way where it was very real, but also very bizarre, like a Twilight Zone movie. I can't help myself from going on about it a little bit too much, even though it's not like it's not the greatest thing ever, but in some respects it like totally is.
So good. It's so good.
Number 2 for me is Logan. I don't really talk about superhero movies a lot. I don't particularly like them. I'll probably do a video on that. I just feel like they're TV episodes. Logan, I liked it a lot. I feel like I'm not going to love it as much as time goes on. I feel like it is going to age and it's going to wear. But as far as what they made and they put out, saw it in the theater, couldn't wait to watch it again. I love the way they sort of ended Hugh Jackman's run as Wolverine. I'm glad he's done with it. As much as I really liked him in the role, I think everybody did. A lot of, the first 2 prequels were just not good. X-Men Origins is just a nightmare. I'm glad they were able to get a really good movie out of it, and a lot of that has to do with Deadpool. Logan was able to get a R rating because of the success of Deadpool, and Wolverine really needs to be an R-rated movie. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's ridiculous to have a character that's eviscerating people with knives on his fist and have it be PG-13 where they're not really casting any blood. In fact, I've got a lot of disdain for these extremely violent PG-13 movies where there's a lot of death and even just a lot of gunfire, because I feel like it really makes it cartoony. And honestly, I'm not going to be surprised if years from now, when we have a better understanding of the psychology behind this type of entertainment, I will not be surprised if we determine that form of violence is actually more mind-warping compared to realistic violence, where you're seeing the blood, you're seeing the carnage, not in an exaggerated sense like Tarantino, but in a very realistic sense. I think that there's something to be said for realistic violence sort of scaring you and feeling maybe a little bit too real. I think there's something to that versus just mowing down bodies with no real consequences, even if the consequences is just gore. It's a consequence of violence, and a lot of PG-13 movies. Go back and watch. Well, don't go back and watch Suicide Squad. But here's a clip from Suicide Squad where a room of people get mowed down, and there's literally no consequences to it whatsoever.
My cards is on the table, man.
It got done, didn't it?
So for that reason, I loved Logan, but I also just loved the feel of it, the Western vibe, the it's not post-apocalyptic, even though it kind of has that, like, that sort of futuristic vibe, that sort of desolate future vibe. Really just love everything about it. I'm really glad they did what they did with that film. And number one goes to Baby Driver. Edgar Wright is my favorite director working right now, at least my favorite sort of new director. And I know he's been around for a long time, but I call him a new director because he really only has a handful of films under his belt. He really took a lot of time off with the whole Ant-Man fiasco. And honestly, I'm kind of glad he didn't do that movie. When I had heard he was going to do that, I was interested, but I was also thinking, oh, the Shaun of the Dead guy, does he need to be doing a Marvel movie? And I'm not necessarily hating on Marvel right here, but they do have like a formula. Marvel movies all sort of look the same. They have a very sort of set way they like those movies to be produced so that they feel like they're part of the same universe. Like that is a thing with Marvel movies. And I think that's probably why Wright ended up bowing out, is that creates an environment with a lack of creative freedom. So I'm glad he got out of that and decided to do Baby Driver, which is just a balls out action car chase movie. We needed one of those. We haven't really had a good one of those in a while. Fast and the Furious does not count. Those movies have their place, but those really hinge on over the top, crazy, computer graphic heavy, just really grandiose, concepts that are off the wall and just bombastic. That has its place. And to the credit of those films, those filmmakers know what they're doing, because those movies tend to be pretty aware of the fact that they're not realistic and that they're kind of cheesy. They're pretty self-aware, which I like. So enough respect for those. Baby Driver. We just don't have this anymore. I'm glad it's something that Edgar Wright decided to do. He decided to do it. Well, he didn't decide to do it. He had the idea for this movie while listening to the John Spencer Blues Explosion, their track Bell Bottoms, which is a track I really like a lot. I've sort of listened to that while playing games and stuff, like car racing games, so it makes perfect sense for him to have had this sort of like vision while listening to that track. So that's cool. I heard him say that in an interview. And then also, the movie takes place in Atlanta. I'm in Atlanta. I'm not originally from here, but I've been here almost 10 years, and I really like the city. It's really grown a lot since I've been here. It's a cool town, and it's become the number one filming location in the country. I don't know if you knew that, but very few of the movies filmed here actually take place here. And the couple that I've seen that do, they're in Atlanta. Like, someone might mention the Atlanta Braves or something that, like, everybody knows. But Edgar Wright originally wrote Baby Driver to take place in LA. Then when they decided to film in Atlanta, probably for tax purposes, he rewrote key elements to make it an Atlanta-based movie. So the restaurants and some of the references and places that you hear are like local places that we like. That's really cool, just having been from here. And even if you're not from here, I think it's cool to see a movie that kind of takes place in the heart of a city that you're maybe not familiar with, because all movies, they try to take place in New York or LA just because they're New York and LA. John Hamm, he's in it. Everybody likes John Hamm. And some just quick runner-ups. It Comes at Night kind of wins for the title that most sounds like a porno. That movie actually suffered a lot from marketing, bad marketing. They sold you one movie, then showed you another one. So if you don't know anything about it, watch it and just watch it without any knowledge. You'll like it a lot more. Lego Batman. Lego Batman gets big points because it is a better Batman movie than Batman vs. Superman. So we got a good Batman movie.
Save Martha!
And to hate on Batman vs. Superman, again, Wonder Woman actually might be redeeming the DC universe. Again, I'm not a big superhero fan, wasn't super excited about Wonder Woman, but it was really fantastic, and it may have the potential to sort of revive the DC cinematic universe, whatever you want to call it, because it's floundering. It's really having a tough time, and I blame all of that on Zack Snyder. So, if you like this video, if you like the films on my list, please let me know in the comments. If you think I'm an asshole for including some of these on the list, let me know that in the comments. But thanks for liking and subscribing, and as always, thanks for watching.